Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're doing a forensic deep dive into the infamous dollar milk war. We are going to unpack exactly how everyday grocery items, the things we all just mindlessly toss into our carts, can actually be utilized as highly effective corporate weapons. Picture this. You stroll into your local grocery store, make a beeline for the dairy aisle, and boom, you see a price tag that feels like an absolute gift. A full liter of milk for just one single dollar. At first glance, it sounds like a massive win for your wallet, right? It feels like one of those rare moments where the giant corporations are actually looking out for the little guy. But are they? Here's the catch. That perceived win for the everyday shopper is actually a highly calculated illusion. As our source material brilliantly describes it, this is a magic trick of corporate dominance designed to do one primary thing, and that is to completely destroy the competition. This isn't just a story about cheap dairy. It's a revealing look at how two massive companies can effectively hold an entire nation's food supply hostage.
Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. First, the dollar milk illusion. Second, the 2011 supermarket salvo. Third, the dairy farmer nightmare. Fourth, the high-low pricing scam. And finally, a threat to food security. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The dollar milk illusion, and how a supposed bargain hides a thin market. To really grasp what's going on here, we have to talk about a concept called a thin market. Basically, this is a market setup with very few buyers and sellers. And why should you care? Well, because in a thin market, competition is inherently weak. This total lack of competition allows giant corporations to easily and legally control prices. This is exactly the kind of environment where everyday consumers are lured in only to end up being completely milked for cash. Section 2, the 2011 supermarket salvo. The battle for the dairy aisle begins. So to understand the roots of this whole pricing crisis, we gotta rewind to 2011. The Australian supermarket giant Coles fired the opening shot by suddenly slashing its home brand milk to just $1 a liter. And then, literally weeks later, its main rival, Woolworths, matched that exact same price. On the surface, this rapid-fire price war looked fantastic for the public, but our analysis shows it was actually a meticulously calculated move. At the time, Coles and Woolworths controlled a staggering 66% of Australian grocery sales. That left a measly 34% for all the independents. By throwing around that massive economic weight, these two giants created a situation where absolutely no one else had the sheer scale to compete with a $1 price tag. The market was completely cornered. Section 3. The dairy farmer nightmare. The human cost of slash prices. Because you see, the true victims of this aggressive strategy weren't the supermarkets at all. They had plenty of capital to absorb the loss. The real human cost fell on the producers at the very bottom of the supply chain. When that retail price plummeted, the profit margins for independent producers absolutely collapsed. This wasn't just a tough quarter, it was a full-blown catastrophe that created an existential threat, forcing many family farms to close their doors forever. It created what's known as the producer's trap. First off, the supermarkets publicly claimed these cuts wouldn't hurt farmers, which honestly was a highly questionable claim to make. The sheer size of this duopoly meant alternative buyers were practically wiped out. Farmers who were producing a highly perishable good had nowhere else to sell. They were trapped in a nightmare scenario, left entirely at the mercy of whatever rock-bottom price the giant retailers decided to pay. Section 4. The high-low pricing scam. The bait and switch revealed. We've reached the turning point here, pulling back the curtain on what actually happened after that independent competition was crushed. The supermarkets essentially ran a precise 3-step playbook. Step 1, slash those home brand prices. Step 2, collapse the independent profit margins to starve out the competition. And Step 3, jack the prices right back up once the market is safely cornered. Obviously, once the damage was done to the independents, the supermarkets didn't keep the prices low out of the goodness of their hearts. The trap was officially sprung. And that perfectly explains the modern yo-yo pricing effect we see today. Imagine a regular box of chocolates, priced at $22, and then suddenly it gets slapped with a bright yellow special label for $11. Thousands of products bounce between these set prices all the time. But it's an illusion. The so-called discount is already built into the system to make you feel like you're scoring a deal, while they tightly control the massive margins behind the scenes. Section 5. A threat to food security. The systemic risk of a monopolized economy. Because this milk war, it isn't just some crazy retail anecdote. It's a symptom of a much larger systemic risk, highlighting how Australia has quietly morphed into one of the most monopolized economies in the developed world. Shockingly, when regulators eventually investigated this dollar milk war, they found that the price cuts technically did not break the law. This just goes to show how the rules of the game are often written to protect the massive scale of big players rather than ensuring the survival of the small competitors who actually keep a market fair. As a direct result of this kind of business practice, which is fundamentally bad for anyone outside the corporate boardroom, consumer trust has completely tanked, 75%. Today, a whopping 3/4 of the public believe the system is tilted entirely in favor of corporate interests. And the cost of this so-called hollow democracy is severe. We're looking at the tragic loss of independent farmers, the rapid decline of smaller brands, and a total collapse of market innovation and loyalty. Because when we lose our independent producers, our daily food choices become nothing more than a total illusion, just corporate magic tricks masquerading as variety on a grocery shelf. Now, if you want to understand the deeper narrative behind the numbers we've looked at today and learn to analyze complex data like this for yourself, I highly recommend checking out the sponsor mentioned in our source material. Brilliant. It's honestly a fantastic way to sharpen how you reason through complex global challenges and economic systems. To wrap up this explainer, I'll leave you with a provocative thought straight from the text, and I really want you to chew on this. Is the $1 milk model a necessary evolution for delivering cheap groceries to consumers, or is it a clown show that is actively hurting our long-term food security? I invite you to critically analyze the true cost of your everyday convenience the next time you're pushing a cart down the supermarket aisle. Thanks for joining me today, and keep asking the big questions.